boy, do we have a lot to discuss, and that's just the way we like it. And for those of you who are curious, let me just say up front, I enjoyed this episode. Some of it I enjoyed quite a bit while I was watching it, and some of it I enjoy more in retrospect, which we're all going to discuss. But before we get started, I want to touch on release strategies. I feel that streaming services are still figuring this out, and they haven't cracked it yet. I have come around to agreeing that weekly releases are the way, but I feel that releasing them at 3 a.m. is not the way. There's a lot of stress trying to figure out a time to watch it and avoid spoilers. I wonder what your experience is like. I have added pressure that I need to review it. So I think that going forward, because this review, in my opinion, is getting up too late. So I think going forward, I can't believe it, I'm going to have to get up at 5 a.m. on Fridays to review this thing. And probably the Marvel shows on Disney Plus as well, unless, for the love of God, they change the time they release these shows. Game of Thrones debuted every week, of course, every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. I know you have also the problem of the global audience these days, so there's got to be a time there. There's got to be a window there where they can release the show so that the most people can watch it when it airs. Because I just feel this is difficult. I mean, I think it's hard on a weekday for people whose job it isn't to watch this show right away as soon as it drops. I know some of you watch it over breakfast, but for everybody else, how are you going to avoid spoilers all day long? I think it's almost impossible. So I think that there needs to be a change, and I'm curious what you think. I mean, we're getting there. We've almost cracked it. We're very close, but I think there needs to be a later time of the day when it debuts, and I'm curious what would you pick? Maybe a weekend would be a good time for it to debut, because more people would be available globally if it was at an off time. All right, so Mando's back, baby, and so are my weekly reviews. Just as a refresher, the way these are going to work when I review a show weekly, as I will with the upcoming Marvel Disney Plus shows as well, I'll do a non-spoiler intro up front, and then the rest of the episodes, like the first third will be non-spoiler, and then the final 2/3 will include spoilers. So I reckon you best stay sharp, partner, because yes, The Mandalorian continues to be a Western, which is very interesting to me, because for the most part, people just don't like Westerns. There's always someone who will be like, I like Westerns, Grace. Well, guess what? I like Westerns too. But you can't deny their poor box office. They just don't do well for some reason, which is a shame. Like 3:10 to Yuma, tanked. It's a fantastic movie. Also, Westworld. Just ask Westworld. I mean, they even abandoned their Western theme in season 3 in a bid to increase their audience. That really did not work out for them. In fact, they halved it. It went, they lost the little audience that they had. But here we have a space Western, which features an adorable alien baby. The cutest baby ever. Really a cute baby. Still just as cute in season 2. Although, I don't think they really had any good, like the drinking of the... I think Baby Yoda didn't really... We'll talk about Mando and Baby Yoda at the very end of the episode. There's lots of other stuff for us to discuss. But I think, you got a space Western with a cute, adorable alien baby. You throw in a sprinkling of OG Star Wars references, and it appears to be a winning combination. I will say, though, that I think that many of the Star Wars references are just way too obscure. I mean, I think that there is a sliver of you who are like, oh yeah, I remember when they referenced sand dragons in the original trilogy. But the rest of us are just like, woo, what? So I think that's a bit of a problem. I would have somebody watch this show, when they're going over the scripts and in post, and when they can still make some changes, who is not as versed in the Star Wars lore as uber fans Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Because I'd never heard of the Krayt. I don't remember the Krayt. They're cool, but I don't get it. I mean, the rest of us are just left wondering, how long is this freaking detour going to take? Because I thought we were looking for Jedi's, the Darksaber, and Dave Filoni characters. I'm like, wow, this is a very long detour. I mean, I want to help this town out and all, but come on. By the way, speaking of sand dragons, and I saw some of you already comment on this on Twitter, I'm sure Warner Brothers is like, are you freaking kidding me, Disney? You turned Tatooine into Arrakis, right? I mean, even from the first Dune movie, they deal with the sandworm. It's a sandworm. I don't care if they call it a sand dragon. It's a sandworm. They deal with it in a similar fashion. And sure enough, I think a lot of people now will be like, oh yeah, it's like that episode of The Mandalorian. And Warner Brothers and Dune fans will be like, God damn it, Disney, you did it to us again. I mean, Disney's just moving so fast, which is funny because this show moves very slow. But Disney overall is moving so fast, they're just consuming genre and lore everywhere they go before everyone else because, again, they're just moving at such a fast pace. But after a slow start, I did feel that episode one had some impressive action moments. And of course, as I suspected, one heck of a last-minute tease. And I think because I got that tease, even though I was very stressed out about it while I was watching the episode, I was like, is this all you're gonna do? But then I got it. So now that I think back on the episode, I'm like, you know what? That was very pleasant. You know, it was really enjoyable. Once you take out all the stress of having to try and find time to watch it, you know, on a Friday morning and not getting any spoilers and, you know, you got your tease, you're like, oh yeah, that was very pleasant. I enjoyed my trip on Tatooine. It was nice. And I think that the peacefulness of the Mandalorian is part of its appeal, and it makes it different from a lot of other current content, which is more manic. All right, so let's talk spoilers. All right, you've been warned. All right, so these days, Westerns are synonymous with Mr. Timothy Olyphant. Even Quentin Tarantino feels that way, and I do too. I love Timothy Olyphant. Big Deadwood and Justified fan, although I never watched the Deadwood movie. I think it came too late. I was like, only an hour and a half. You can't possibly have enough story in there to make it worth my time. Did anybody watch the Deadwood movie? Was it good? Should I go back and watch it? It is, I believe, on HBO Max. All right, so anyway, sure enough, Timothy Olyphant is the Marshal of the podunk town that Mando rolls into after getting information that there's one of his kind there. But this is no rando Mando, as Oliphant's Cobb Vanth is wearing Boba Fett's armor. And I must confess, I had absolutely no idea that he was. I know some of you Star Wars fans will be appalled. I mean, I know Star Wars, but not to the degree that I know Marvel and DC comics, right? So I knew it was Mandalorian armor, but I didn't make the connection. I mean, my first thought when he appeared in the doorway was, that's the skinniest Mandalorian I've ever seen. The armor barely fit him. I was like, how could he stand up in that? It looks too heavy for him. And I don't think that armor is going to do enough for him because he just looks so weak otherwise. I mean, I love Timothy Olyphant, but, you know, maybe he had like bigger coats on and stuff on his other shows. But here he just looked like, I would say maybe like too skinny. And then as soon as he spoke, I was like, oh, it's Timothy Olyphant. And I'm a big Timothy Olyphant fan, again, as I said, so that really distracted me. I was like, oh. And then I laughed when he took his helmet off because, of course, I'm sure Pedro Pascal was like, I mean, you could even kind of tell that in his body language. Of course, it was because Mando was like, you took your helmet off? Because he thinks, obviously that's not the way. But, Timothy Olyphant was quick to clarify that he's not actually Mandalorian. But then also I got a big laugh out of it because he had the most beautifully coiffed hair under his helmet since Kylo Ren. It was hilarious. And of course, poor Pedro Pascal did not have the same benefit when he took his helmet off briefly in season 1. And then only when Boba Fett showed up at the very end, I was like, oh, wait a minute, is that his armor? And I checked it and I was like, okay, it is. I mean, he didn't have the whole armor on. So I think I have that going for me also in my defense. He had only parts of it on. It didn't look and also all Mandalorian armor, looks very similar to me in a lot of ways. So I guess the little flag on his head was a giveaway, but I mean, how am I supposed to know that's not standard issue for some people? Now, I have some questions about this armor. First off, where is Timothy Olyphant getting missile refills in the middle of the desert? He's like, as soon as he fired it first time, and I don't know how he figured out how to use it so quickly. I was like, does this come with operating instructions? I was like, you have amazing aim for your first try. And then he somehow had additional missiles, which was crazy. Now, also, I'm thinking Boba Fett retired. I don't think he lost that armor. I think he traded it away. I think he's given up the way. So I'm very curious to see what happens. So my third question is, are we going to get a flashback? And I hope it's next episode. Don't make me wait too long for this. And I want to know why he decided, how and why he parted with his armor and took on the ways of the Tusken Raiders. The Tusken Raiders, I liked, by the way, I forgot to put it in my notes here. The score here continues to be phenomenal. But, they had kind of like a Middle Eastern, desert theme going on with the Tusken Raiders. I was like, are you guys going to take your helmets off? What's under here? I want to see. I really am very curious. Some people are like cool not knowing. They're like, I don't need to know, man. I'm somebody who likes to know. Some people like, I don't need to know spoilers. I can wait. If it's out there, I want to know it. That's just kind of like the kind of person I am. So I'm like, what's under your helmet? Why you have it on? I'd like to know more about them. All right. I have a lot of questions. All right. I'd be that kid from church choir hanging out with everybody. I'd be like, ask them why they have these helmets on. What do they look like under there? Where'd they find these little plants that have water in them that they break open that seem to be full of dust, but yet somehow have water in them? All right, so anyway, also, my fourth question is, what the heck happened to Boba Fett's eyebrows? Did they rub off from not taking his helmet off all those years? I think Mando would want to know that. He's like, make sure you put some Vaseline or something or something to protect your eyebrows, man. You don't want to end up like me. All right, so that was literally the last few seconds of the episode. In fact, as Mando sped off into the desert on his speedster, Timothy Olyphant had a cooler speedster. That was great. But as Mando sped off into the desert, I paused it because I was like, how much time is left? Is there going to be time for like some big thing to get people talking about episode 1, season 2? And then I pressed play. There was like two minutes left or something. I knew that there were tons of credits to come. So I was like, it's almost over. And then sure enough, as soon as I pressed play, bam, there was Boba Fett. Now, as for the rest of the episode, at the opening, I can't believe that was John Leguizamo. I even rewound it, and it doesn't sound like him at all. So I think it's a bit of a waste. They're like, how'd you like to be a guest star on our show? And no one will know that it's you. Even when they do know that it's you, they won't be able to tell that it's you. I'm like, why'd we pay him? I did think that was cool makeup. And I thought, is Baby Yoda going to grow up to be a wrestling fan? I thought that was funny. Baby Yoda is not phased, which is cool. We'll talk again about, actually in just a moment, he's in my notes. But I thought that this opening scene was cool because it was a departure from the Western theme. And it gave Mando an opportunity to go full Batman, complete with his little Robin. I find it amusing that Mando takes Baby Yoda on these super dangerous missions. And I'm sure Amy Sedaris was disappointed that she didn't get to babysit this time. But I can understand that he doesn't want Baby Yoda out of his sight, but the idea is that Baby Yoda can take care of himself, right? So I'm eager to see Baby Yoda start to contribute. It doesn't have to be a lot. I know some of you were like, we don't want to overdo it, Grace. But I think at this point, we're underdoing it. I felt there were multiple times when we could have used a little bit of the Force. I think it would have been effective. Then, of course, we returned to Tatooine. Such a hub of Star Wars activity, you'd think the planet would be more crowded. I loved, again, seeing Amy Sedaris. I think she's fantastic. I think the way she delivers Star Wars dialogue so naturally and nonchalantly is fantastic. And I would be thrilled to see her become a regular like Carl Weathers and Gina Carano. I think this might be the best thing Amy Sedaris has ever done. I love her in this show. And she was an elf, but she was only okay there. But anyway, I too thought it was adorable when Mando pulled his pouch around and revealed that he was carrying around Baby Yoda like that. I was like, this is like, really, I told you, it's the adventures of the galaxy's greatest single dad. I also continue, and at the rate he's going, he ain't never going to give this kid up. He's going so slowly. This is taking forever. I also continue to be very impressed with the VFX and that this show is entirely shot on a soundstage. Although, I am starting to be able to see the line. I can see where this set ends and the digital wall begins, because you'll notice that they never go too far out from the center of the screen. I'm like, that's where you hit the wall. It's like the Truman Show, right? Like that's no longer sky, that's a wall. And I'm starting to see it. Do you? Do you see it just yet? As for the main mission with the town, to me it was a bit hard to sit through, only because I've seen this story so many times on television and comics. If you don't consume TV and comics and entertainment in general to the level that some of us do, which granted is a lot, then this would be very interesting to you, I'm sure, or to younger viewers, or to maybe like much older viewers who think, kindly and fondly back to the 1960s television shows that were, speaking of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which were showcased there. But although I would think even that group would be like, I've seen this a lot already. So, unless this is fresh to you, I think it was like this close to cliche. Like even some of the lines, I was like, of course that's what he said. I mean, it was like it almost at points seemed to me a little bit like a children's story, which is fine. This is a show for all ages, but I was like, this is like for really little kids at some points. But the thing that kept it from getting fully becoming a cliche to me was that you had Pedro Pascal and Timothy Olyphant front and center. They're both fantastic actors, and I was happy to spend the time with them. And the flashback to when the Death Star fell, that was kind of fun, even though those guys really did turn up very quick. But I thought Timothy Olyphant's second Death Star crack was pretty funny. To me, though, the episode really picked up with the plan to kill the Krayt. First off, I was like, this is a surprisingly good plan. This is actually very well thought out. I'm surprised it didn't work, but of course, they had to make it interesting. But I thought that was a great plan. And I thought the nod to Jurassic Park, by the way, when they first were looking at where the Krayt lived, was pretty funny. And I like the twist that the sand dragon ate the Tusken Raider instead of the Bantha, because, the Bantha's tied up, so we can just save him for a snack later. I thought that was pretty great. But the best moment for me, where I was like, that's awesome, was when Mando and Timothy Olyphant took to the sky. That was fantastic. Usually when the Mandalorian uses his jetpack, I feel it looks kind of like wonky, or like he's clearly like on wires. But this, I genuinely felt they were like rocketeering. I was like, that's pretty freaking neat. It was just so great. And the way they took off in tandem, maybe you need more than one to do it, but they were like people-shaped fighter jets. It was really cool. And also up to that point, I felt that it was uncool that they were just watching everybody else lay the trap. I was like, are you guys going to do any work? But I have to say, they really stepped up and took on the most risk when the mission was actually going on. So it's all good. I think they can just sit and relax. I'll gladly bury some charges if you guys are going to be the ones to actually fly in this thing's face. Everybody got too close to that sand dragon. I was like, you guys are too close. You're too close. Work on your throwing arm. Seeing them fly through the air together, again, was so thrilling, and it gave the episode the Star Wars twist that I felt that it needed. Again, I thought at some point Baby Yoda would offer an assist with the Force, like when they were like, we need it to come further out. I thought Baby Yoda would be like, allow me, and he'd pull it out with the Force, and I'd be like, that baby's amazing, but he didn't. I also thought Mando would let Timothy Olyphant keep the armor at the end to protect his town, being like, you do the armor proud, right? You're an honorary Mandalorian. And by the way, Timothy Olyphant otherwise is so skinny, I bet that he is probably taken over real soon by a new Marshal. I think that armor was the only thing keeping him in charge of the town. But, oh well, he had a good run. But Mando needs that armor to interact with Boba Fett, so that's the deal. As for Mando himself, I gotta tell you, I really just like watching him walk around at this point with his sweet Pedro Pascal voice. I understand that Pedro Pascal, of course, as I told you, wants to remove his helmet more, but the show has made, and this is like the second round of arguments with Lucasfilm over this. The first one is well documented. But I think, considering the big deal that's made about him not taking his helmet off, I think that he should only do it in private with the child, as we discussed before, and maybe with Boba Fett. I would say, he'd say, check my eyebrows. Are they rubbing off? But anyway, I would say that maybe twice per season he could take his helmet off. I think Pedro Pascal has such a distinct voice, he shouldn't underestimate that. And he should be getting other work where he can show his face. Like he's Maxwell Lord, for Pete's sake. All right, anyway. I think it's wild that the Mandalorian isn't walking around Galaxy's Edge. That would be amazing. I mean, how is there not a Mando and Baby Yoda photo op? That to me just seems absolutely ridiculous. I hope Baby Yoda doesn't just coo and look into spittoons for the entire season, but I don't think that he will, obviously. I think, they did a lot with him in season 1. And so at this point, I don't totally trust Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, to be honest with you, but I'm like 80% of the way there. By the way, who cleaned off Baby Yoda after he climbed into that spittoon? I was like, ooh, are you standing in spit? That's disgusting. We all saw Back to the Future 3. We know what happens. Also, I thought Baby Yoda would be getting a face full of sand, considering how close he was to the ground in the back of that speeder. I was like, you need some kind of child seat. I don't think you're supposed to put him in, the bag. I mean, at some points, he's clearly a puppet. Like when Amy Sedaris took him away from Mando, I was like, that's a puppet. I mean, he needs to be a little less stiff as a full body figure because sometimes it breaks the illusion. But I guess he used the Force to keep the sand out of his face. He's so cute, I don't care what he does. So I felt Mando Season 2, Episode 1 was a very pleasant start. And it did the impossible. I think it gave everybody what they wanted. It's a good, like a good compromise. They say that a good compromise leaves everyone a little bit frustrated. And I think that's kind of what the Mandalorian episodes are like. During the episode, we're all at some different points, all of us are like, rah, 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 rah. But then at the end, we're all like, I got what I wanted. So the fact that this show can please everybody is particularly impressive. It's a particularly impressive thing to do these days, considering how divided fandoms and even just regular audiences are. But I'm ready to pick up speed next week with Boba Fett. I mean, this was a nice little intro. It was pleasant, a nice palate cleanser. But let's start going. But I mean, I don't know. Let's see what they have in store for us. I think the show, its ability to surprise, is impressive. So what do you think? Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.